I want to begin by just exploring maybe the last couple of months for yourself. How has it been coming out of football, having time to reflect on some of the things that have happened over your career? How's that process been for you?
Yeah, it's been the first couple of months out after you come out of work you have a roller coaster of emotions. Really, you have the disappointment and frustration at losing your job, and then you go through the process of what's next. First, for me, it was a chance to reconnect with my family. I was up in Scotland; they were down here, so that was important. I've got a young family, so that was important to me. And then you start the process of re-educating yourself, for a better phrase, and going on courses. And then it's also enabled me to work my network and get around clubs both in England and abroad, and try and stay current with the trends of the game. And then, I've been fortunate in the sense of that with that time, I feel I've spent it wisely on going on courses online and getting to have a better understanding of certain topics that are coming into the game. Data analysis is massive now, so getting a better understanding of that. And then recently, I've just enrolled on a counselling course through the PFA, and I'm thoroughly enjoying that. So whilst you're out at work, you get the chance to keep on improving yourself, and it's about maximising that time.
Do you feel recharged and educated to go again? I'm just interested on that process of working on yourself.
Yes, there's only so many jobs you can do for the wife in and around the garden and the house. I think the garage has been cleaned 3 times. So no, in all seriousness, just ready to go again.
Let me bring you back to your early days then, Gary. So how did football become a passion for you, and when did you start to realise that you had a love for the game?
Oh, I was very lucky. I class myself as very lucky. I was born into football. My dad played for Manchester City, Leyton Orient, Nottingham Forest, Sunderland, and then back to Forest before finishing at Hereford. So all my life I've been involved in football. So from a very early age, going to watch Forest play, and after the game when all the supporters have gone and all the families are waiting for the players, those kids would be up in the stand playing under the concourse, and we'd be playing with a football if somebody had brought a football, a tennis ball if somebody had brought a tennis ball, and if there was no ball, we'd make something out of the plastic cups. And myself, Scott Gemmell, would be playing under there. Andy Todd, I can remember playing under there with them, and so that's where it first started. And obviously at that time, Nottingham Forest were under Brian Clough, just fantastic and winning trophies. It was a fantastic childhood for me to have, and from a very early age, that's all I ever wanted to be, was a footballer and try and follow in my dad's footsteps.
Did you feel pressure because of your dad on that?
No, not at all. My dad was the opposite. My dad was very keen for me to get a career, and he was big on schoolwork from a very early age. I remember we went up to Sunderland, County Durham, and I was at the junior school, St Cuthbert's, and we had a football mad Newcastle United fan as teacher, and it felt like we were playing football every night after school in the school team, Mr. McAdam, and he was big then on, you've got to get your homework done, otherwise you're not playing in the school team, and that carried all the way through. And so I never felt under pressure from him to go into the industry. He was always very cautious because he will have seen, the amount of people that didn't make it. So at 17, I was working as Swinton Insurance behind the counter there selling insurance.
And when was the moment when you became a footballer and started to realise that you had a talent and saw this as a career? Was there a standout moment there?
Well, when I was at Hereford working, I was playing non-league for a local club called Westfields, and in our office, the office was going to make someone unemployed. And I went home that night and just said, oh, someone's going to be made redundant, just financial costs. And my old man said, well, why don't you go part-time and come and train with us? So I did. I went and did that. So that worked out well for everyone because no one lost the job. And I was then working. My workload increased because I was working from 8:30 till 10 o'clock in insurance, then going from 10 o'clock till 1 o'clock playing football, and then from 1 o'clock till 5:30 back in the insurance. But I loved it. I was, like I say, 17, 18-year-old lads having a whale of a time. And so during that time, one of the players got injured who played in my position. And I was, to quote my dad, the only one left. So I had to play. And before you knew it, I was making my debut on the Saturday. And that was it. And that's how it started.
And when was that moment for you in terms of that footballing journey that you went on, that you started to realise, I actually want to maybe engage with the management side of football? And you mentioned your dad and maybe the role models that you were around and the culture of football growing up. Was there ever a moment where you thought, okay, this is now what I want to do?
Well, what a good question. Excuse me. My earliest memory was when Forest Reserves used to play, and my dad was being in the first team, and a lot of the first team lads would go down and watch the reserves play in the evening, and he would take me along, and we'd sit in the box with all the other first team players, and I'm 13, 14, but I remember listening to their conversations, talking about the game and learning then. So from that age, I can definitely remember listening to what they were saying and trying to understand what they were talking about in the game. And then, just from then, realistically talking about management, I was always sort of like captain at school. I had a couple of good PE teachers that would involve me at that age, 15 and 16. Yeah, from an early age, but vividly remember sitting in amongst great players at Forest and listening and learning.
Am I right in saying that your playing career was cut short due to injury?
Yes, unfortunately. I had a back operation. I kept having them problems with my hamstring. I ended up having a back operation, and unfortunately that got infected from the operation. So I ended up being out. Instead of being 6 weeks out, I think I was 9 months out. Tried to get back playing, but I did to a level at Rotherham. But then I had a recurrence of it, and they advised me that the demands of professional football were probably not up for myself, and so at 25, I had to retire, which was devastating, really, because it's all I ever wanted to do, and to be told that you couldn't do that anymore, that was something that really hurt.
What was that transition like for you going into a new role? You mentioned, working for insurance companies and part-time football. What was that like, maybe coming away from the game and thinking about what you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
Yes. Well, it's completely different now, as in terms of the support network that is there for players from clubs, and I think that's brilliant for someone that's been through it. What's on offer now, the resources from the PFA and from the clubs themselves is really good. For myself, football really was all I knew. I didn't want to go back into the insurance game. I'd really enjoyed my time involved in the football. So for me at that time, it was, football was the next best thing was coaching. And there was a lad, remember Tony Laughlin? He was the first team coach at, he was first team coach at Burnley with Sean Dyche for a long time.
Okay.
We'd played together at Forest. He'd left and he had just retired as well through injury. And he was going on a coaching course. And he just said to me, look, I'm going on this coaching badge course next week. Why don't you come along? And that's how it started. Went along, realised I enjoyed it. And I met a lad called Richard Weston, who was running Forest's under 10 development centre. And he said, why don't you come and help me out at night, 2 nights a week in Nottingham? And I can vividly remember my first session with these bunch of under 10s, and I was frightened to death of these under 10s because it was my first ever coaching session. But that's how it all started. I then worked in the Nottingham City schools in some really rough areas, in the camps in the summer. And then I came across Keith Alexander, who was a brilliant bloke, and he had designed one of the first ever college schemes. All these college schemes now that get run. He'd set one up with South East Derbyshire College and Ilkeston Town, and he said, come and take this. And so I was doing that during the day, and then fortunately John Peacock went in as the academy manager at Derby County, and he gave me a call, and I was working in the evenings with Derby County's under-12s with Pat Lyons, who has recently joined the FA as one of their coaches. So that was my journey into the coaching.
How do you think those experiences shaped your managerial roles more recently? Is there anything that you've taken away in terms of the values that you've learned from those different diverse areas that have shaped you?
Well, a lot of learning on reflection at the time. Like I say, I was coaching in some rough areas of Nottingham, and the most important thing was building a relationship with some of these kids. And quickly realised that I had to get them on side and to get them involved. And so your personality and how you communicate is vital. And so that was one of my really first big lessons that I learned, is the importance of engaging these lads and communicating through their language as well. Some of the terminology they were coming up with, I didn't understand, so I had to quickly adapt. And I think that's another word, adaptability. I think that's paramount in coaching, especially as you go into the professional game as well. A lot said now on philosophies and how the style of play and people, but if you haven't got the players how you want to play, then you have to adapt. And I think you have to do that throughout a 90 minutes of a game of football as well.
Talk to me about Derby County then. So you get that experience to work within academy football and then leading on to Blackburn. Talk to me about that journey for you.
Well, like I say, I was part-time for 2 years with Pat Lyons doing the under-12s, under-13s, and we had a real big job on our hands turning the under-12s round, because they'd only just started, but we recruited some great lads. Tom Huddleston, who I became his taxi driver for because he lived in Nottingham, not far from me. So I was his taxi driver for 5 years. Lee Holmes, we took as well, and then we recruited Nathan Doyle and Carl Dickinson, and all of a sudden we got some really good players, and we had 2 very good years with them. And then Derby County, back in those days, you had under 19s and then you had under 17s, and Derby was starting in under 17s, and John Peacock asked me to apply. So I applied and went through the interview process with quite a few other people and was fortunate to be given the job. And that was my first professional job as a coach. Loved it. Worked with some great people. Pete Sturgis, John Peacock, like I say. Steve Taylor was taking the under-19s. Don Holloway, who's now at Manchester City in the strength and conditioning. He was the fitness coach there, and Steve Devine and Terry Standring with the physios, and we had a wonderful team spirit amongst the staff, but also the group of players. And we were fortunate with the players that we managed to produce. Lee Grant was in goal for us, and he went through. Lee Camp went through as well. Isel McLeod, like I say, Marcus Tudgay. We had a real good time there, and it was everybody pulling in the same direction.
And then how did Blackburn come about? Can you kind of link that story to moving on?
Yes, John Peacock had left, and we had a transition, a change with moving from the baseball ground to more farm, and the club had got relegated, and I literally just stepped off a plane from Australia and switched my phone on, and I got a message from the academy manager from Blackburn saying that there was a position available and would I be interested to come up and have an interview. And I went up the next day, and fortunately for me was successful with the interview, and they started there in that summer of 2004.
And from that period of 2004, the likes of Souness, Mark Hughes, even Paul Ince, Sam Allardyce later on, did you take anything away from those coaches in that surrounding environment that made you really think critically about the game?
Yeah, definitely. I think my learning accelerated under those people. Just picking up, I was still only a young coach when I joined Blackburn, and so you picked up different things from them. The presence of Graham Souness and how he carried himself was one of the first things that really I noticed. But he was only there a short time. Mark Hughes came in, attention to detail, fitness levels, quality of the training was just incredible. The use of data that was coming in then, in terms of, it was Prozone then, that was the software, and so getting to see all that firsthand, and then just listening again and learning about things that he'd learned as a player or from his staff. Glyn Hodges was the reserve team manager at the time, and I was the youth team manager, so there was a relationship there in terms of players and sharing his ideas or what the manager wanted. So that was very good, and Mark was very successful and got Blackburn into Europe. To then be able to go and watch on a Thursday night Blackburn in Europe and watching the foreign opposition coming in, that was really good as well. Sam Allardyce, again, presence, attention to detail, humour, the way you observed how he made people feel, and the success of the club at the time. And then Paul Ince again, Manchester United, Inter Milan, Liverpool, just his standards and how, talked about winning, so you were constantly learning. And yeah, it really helped shape your beliefs and on how you saw the game.
And in terms of that then, Gary, so in terms of developing players during that period for you, and you mentioned the different types of managers and the environments that you were in, is there anything that stands out in terms of, some of the best things that you did during that time to develop and get the best out of individuals? You mentioned the analysis element, but was there any other additional things that you can reflect on? Well,
under Mark Hughes' team, especially, was the fitness of the players and the amount of work put into the players to make them better physically, to make them better technically, and to give them the best opportunity. And that was something that obviously we had to get across to the young players, to embrace that, to stand a chance of progressing up to even training with them, the training intensity. And so that was the big thing. Like I say, I always remember how fit Mark Hughes' teams were, how aggressive they were. So that was something that, we passed over to those youth players at the time.
And in terms of becoming caretaker manager then, do you want to maybe just give listeners and viewers just an insight of what that is for you and how you felt during that process? I think you were caretaker twice at Blackburn and then eventually getting the role. But if you take that kind of caretaker role, what's that like for you? Because obviously the people that you're working with are, leaving and you're stepping up to kind of support the team. Just interested on the kind of the intricate things that happened there during that moment.
It was a real scenario of utter chaos, really, in the sense of it was over the Christmas period. They'd lost the game, I think it was on Boxing Day, and we were all in work the next day. And I think Eric Black was this assistant, but he had been the caretaker that season as well. So it went Steve Keane, Eric Black, then Henning Berg came in, and then they've lost. And then in that morning, the club then got rid of Henning Berg, Eric Black, the goalkeeping coach at the time, Bobby Mims, and the first team coach Ian Brunskill, all in one swoop. And obviously I was then taking the reserves, and I was waiting for whoever was coming in, thinking they must be bringing a new manager in straight away. That didn't seem to materialise, and then as a result of that, they had it, because it was the Christmas period, you had a game 2 days later. And so that was on the Thursday when they all went. As you can imagine, the uncertainty in the dressing room, uncertainty in the training ground was just huge. Came in on the Friday, and I was told to report 8:30. Met the gentleman that was overseeing it all, and he just said, somebody's coming in, but it's not going to be before tomorrow's game. You're going to have to take the team. So there was just me. It was me and the analyst, Paul Brand, who's at Manchester United and has been for many years. And so we quickly had to phone down. I had phoned down and got Terry McPhillips, who was the youth team coach, up to help me. Got the youth team goalkeeping coach, Steve Drench, up to help me, and spoke to a couple of the senior players, Danny Murphy being one, and just said, right, look, listen, I'm taking it tomorrow. This is where we're at, and I'll do everything I can to help you boys to get ready in preparation for Barnsley. It was away on the 29th of December, and fortunately they were really good. They, again, going back to getting them involved and then empowering them, involving them, which they seem to appreciate. And we went to Barnsley and won. Again, expecting the new managers come in, but we ended up taking it again 3 days later, because there was a game against Nottingham Forest at home, which for me was unbelievable because of my connection to the club, and still a Forest fan to this day. And it was a special day that day to be able to manage them against there, and we won that one. And then we found ourselves being asked to do another game, and then I think it was we'd won 3 and we were due to do the 4th game, and on the day of the 4th game they announced that the new manager was coming in. But for me to take that game, and then I took that game, and then the new manager came in, and I found myself being caretaker again about 13 games later. And so I was going in as probably the 5th manager of that season. So it was total chaos. But I'd been at the club a long time, and I knew that we were in danger of relegation, and so we really needed to pull together. I made the players aware of what could happen to support staff if the club were to suffer relegation again. And fair play to the players again. They bought into what we wanted to do and involved them, and we managed to stay up. And then, fortunately for me, that summer, they gave me the job full time.
I'm interested on, you mentioned the words that you mentioned, it was kind of chaotic, and then the environment of kind of sacking people and bringing people in, and even the trajectory of the club from where you started with Blackburn to where it went. What are your thoughts on maybe the ownership there and kind of your outlook towards some of the things that happened during that time? And obviously there's sensitivities to that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was there anything that you can kind of reflect upon in terms of that time that you can share with viewers on, just your general thoughts?
Well, I mean, it was well documented, the chaos there, like you say, to be 5 managers in one season in itself. You don't need to be a genius to work that out, that causes a lot of uncertainty in the football club. And that's not just in the dressing room, that's also on the terraces. And because of, obviously, the fact that there was relegation from the Premiership the year before, the atmosphere wasn't a great place. And then as a result, it was a case of just calming everything down and trying to keep out the headlines and just concentrate on what we could control, which is the football. People admitted mistakes, had made mistakes, and from getting the job permanently, it was time to rebrand the club a little bit on the field, if you want, by a better phrase, by bringing in some young, hungry players, developing a squad of similar sort of ages, and had that youthful enthusiasm with the right type of experience, and then worked very hard on trying to get an identity of way of playing, and at the same time we've got to win football matches. So that's what we did, and just brought a calmness about the place.
You said to leave Blackburn down to obviously your long time there, yeah?
I was there 11 and a half years, made some great friends there, still speak to people that were there at the time, players as well at the time. It was for me, it was a massive part of my life, and one that, I look back on with pride in terms of how we went about it. We had 2 top 10 finishes in the Championship. Missed out on the playoffs the first year by 2 points. Had a FA Cup run got to the quarterfinals, took Liverpool to a replay, beating some Premiership opposition along the way. And from the personal point of view, I managed against Brendan Rodgers. Pellegrini was at Manchester City. Fabulous. Going to Anfield and taking your team's fabulous from a personal point of view as well. So, it hurt that, and that was my first sacking as well. So that really, that hurt. But there was good people in the game that quickly got on the phone and offered me support and gave me some great advice.
Do you have to maybe just accept that being sacked is part of the process within football?
You do after the first one.
Yeah.
I'd say until you've had your first one, and then you think it's okay, and then you get that first one. But then after that, obviously, you do accept that it's part and parcel and what you're going into.
And how did Blackpool come about then? So obviously, leaving Blackburn, I suppose you had a little bit of a time to reflect, and then how did that initial transition happen?
Blackpool was there was Richie Kyle, who's now assistant manager at Luton. He was he'd worked at the academy at Blackburn with us many years ago, and he was assistant manager at Blackpool. and he rang me up asking me about, I think it was about a player, and I said, "Oh, what's the situation with you? You got a new manager yet?" And he said, "Oh, I think so. Unless you fancy putting your name in." And I said, and then he just, Richie being Richie, said, "Go on, put your name in, put your name in." And he said, "Well, let me ring Carl Oyston, and I'll see if you want to have a chat." And he came back. He says, "Can you meet him tomorrow?" And I always say that you should always go and have a chat. You should always go and meet somebody. And I went and met him the next day, and I sat down with him. And obviously at Blackpool, they'd gone through a similar turbulence phase in their history, and he offered me the job that day. And it was a case of, right, I better ring my missus and tell her I've got a job again. And then the next day went into work, contract signed, and discovered that there was only a physio, Richie, physio Phil Horner, and an analyst, Adam Whiteside. And that was it. There was no goalkeeper coach, no kit man. So we quickly went about that. Fitness coach, got Dave Timmins in as the goalkeeping coach, and the club was in a bit of a mess and needed straightening out. But I had an absolute fantastic time there. The togetherness of the staff, not just the footballing staff, the girls in the club shop, Sarah who ran the club shop, to the girls in accounts, was unbelievable. It was, everybody went above and beyond. Everybody mucked in, to use the phrase. And I learned loads there about the power of unity and togetherness there. And the players were just wonderful. They deserve more credit than they got for that season, because they washed their own kit. They had to wash their own, well, we all had to wash our own kit. But, you know, if you were to say to professional footballers now, "Yeah, there's your kit and take it home," you know, I would love to film that. It'd be a great documentary to watch, some of the players, but they got on with it. The standard of the pitch that we played on was not very good. But they never moaned. They all stuck together, and for them to go and win at Wembley was fantastic. The only disappointment was that the fans boycotted, which I understood. But again, we didn't use it as an excuse. And like Wembley was, well, we played Exeter in the final, and no disrespect, Exeter had more fans than us. I think there was 17,000 there that year, and 5,000 were Blackpool. Well, if you go back through the history books, every time Blackpool, and I think they're the most successful club in playoff history, Wembley's been packed in Tangerine with 40-odd thousand there. So that was the only disappointment, if you like, for those players and the staff. But to win at Wembley and to lead your team out at Wembley is fantastic.
Was that difficult with fan protests at Blackpool? Did you kind of sense that, and did you feel responsible to kind of inform fans on what was going on?
We did a little bit. We felt before the game at home, sometimes you'd see some fans outside the ground, and they were sort of like more venting their anger at the fans going in, because there was a few thousand still came in. But it wasn't directed generally at us as staff or players. Yeah, I mean, look, listen, I have to acknowledge that, you know, they said they were going to boycott, and they did. They stuck to their word, which, you know, is, you have to, like you say, take your hat off to that.
And on that then, you mentioned the element of attendance, but did you enjoy Wembley as a whole? You mentioned, you know, throughout the podcast, these big stadiums and managers that you played against, but being at Wembley, did you enjoy winning there and that process of getting promoted?
Wembley is the best place on earth to win. I'd like to say I was fortunate, Sky and watching my dad win there at Wembley. And I remember the year he lost there. He lost to Wolves in the cup final. Andy Gray scored a scruffy goal, and I always remember the mood as a kid of the disappointment, and I didn't want that when we were going. And again, the players deserve an enormous amount of credit because we went to Luton as underdogs in the playoff semi-final and we beat them. And the scenes in the dressing room at the end of the semi-final were fantastic. And we just said to them that the scenes that you've had tonight will be even bigger at Wembley if you win.
Yeah.
And they conducted themselves brilliant in the build-up. They were very focused, and a very proud moment leading your team out at Wembley and then leading them up to go and get the trophy is, stuff that you dreamt of when you were a kid. But what a place to win a game of football,
So again, similar to Blackburn, sad to move on?
Yeah, I had to move on. The club had went into turmoil. It was well documented. The owner sacked his son, Carl Oyston. So, the father sacking his son, and there was, the Football League were getting involved, and there was money being owed left, right, and centre, I think, and so allegedly. And so, I was disappointed to leave, but it was my own doing, that one. But I just felt, I had to.
In terms of that, did you feel a sense of frustration because of the achievement that you had and brought? And then you mentioned the element of ownership and leading upwards. Were you frustrated by that whole process?
I think we got promoted on the first year up because they've had 2 years on the trot getting relegated. So we went into League One and we had a fabulous time in League One and did really well with the budget that we had. We finished 12th in the league, which was top half finish. And so we missed a big opportunity to build on that. Players saw the contracts out, left for free transfers. Clark Robertson, Kyle Vassell, all departed. We'd sold some good young ones. Brad Potts, we sold. Bright Asai Samuel, who's now in Turkey with Jose Mourinho. So we missed a big opportunity to really build something there, and that was the main frustration.
You're kind of happy to see the club have stability now in terms of that ownership element.
I'm very fortunate. I do a lot of radio commentary with Radio Lancs, Andy Bays and Ian Chisnell. Have been brilliant with me, and they get me involved with that. And so, it's good to be going back to Blackpool and seeing grass on the pitch is one thing that we didn't really have that when we were up there. So that was the first thing. But no, delighted for the fans and delighted. It's a great football club and it's a great venue. I always used to love seeing the tower on the motorway. It made you smile.
Do you feel recruitment's key in that aspect? I feel like it's a recurring theme from what you've mentioned throughout the podcast in terms of recruitment and keeping players, and that is that a key focus whilst being a manager?
Many years ago, somebody said to me, if you want to be a good coach, get good players. If you want to be a great coach, get great players. And so I know it's a tongue-in-cheek phrase, but you do have to, as well as obviously coaching and developing them, the better quality that you can get in the building obviously gives you that ability to, try and win more football matches.
Salford City come about, probably somewhere that's closer to home to you. You mentioned where you've situated in Warrington.
Yes.
Did you enjoy that process going to Salford? Obviously a bit of a different project in comparison to the other clubs that you work with. Talk to me about
that. I was assisting Pat Lyons at Derby doing the under-21s, and I got a call saying would I be interested. There was a managerial change, and it was till the end of the season, so I was the first loan manager, I think, in the history of football. So I went on loan to Salford for the last 11 games from Derby. And it was a unique experience. I was on loan there, and, you know, I was working with a very good coach in Warren Joyce. It was COVID, so there was no supporters in the ground as well. That was unique. So the whole experience was just bizarre. But we managed to, again, get the players on board and buy in, involved them as much as we could, and then managed to, I think we might have won 7 out of the last 11 and missed out on the last day to get into the playoffs. Obviously, the class of 92 saw what we did in that sort of space of time, and again, fortunately for me, offered me, the role full time. It was local, so Derby were very good. Darren Wassell, the academy manager at the time, was very good, and Wayne Rooney for allowing it to happen. And so I did the job at Salford and took it. Again, unique experience, obviously, with the class of 92. I really enjoyed speaking to them and picking their brains about football and Manchester United, and you'd be daft not to tap into their knowledge. So, you know, it was good listening to Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, and my line manager more was Gary, and speaking to Gary regularly. And the first window that we had, we didn't do very well in it. There was a bit of a change in how they recruited, or there was the thinking of a change in the recruitment. But we did better in the second window. We brought Matt Smith in, Ryan Watson in. And I think from Matt Smith's debut, we went on an unbelievable run, and I think we lost 1 in 18, maybe 1 in 19 or 2 in 19 at the end, and missed out on the second to last day. So that was disappointing. But we felt that we would lay some real solid foundations to kick on next season. But unfortunately, and this is what you learn that is part of football, is that they wanted to go in a different direction. And as owners, that's their prerogative, and they're entitled to do that. And so, yeah, it was disappointing to leave that. I had a lad on loan from Rangers, Stephen Kelly at the time, and his agent, after I got sacked, had rang to just say sorry about that, which was very good. And he just sort of said, thanks for looking after Stephen, what you did for him. We always went through his clips and talked with him about how he could improve his game. And then he said, would you ever come and work in Scotland? I said, oh, yeah, you'd never say never. And he says, oh, if I hear of anything, I'll give you a shout. And he was true to his word. He said, look, there's a position at Dundee. And I knew Dundee, the area, because I took Blackpool up there for 3 years on pre-season in St Andrews. And so I knew the area a little bit. And they rang, they rang, and they asked if, I'd want to chat. So we had a Zoom like this. And then I went up and met them. And whilst I was up there, I'd left on the Sunday and went to meet him on the Monday. And again, it was one of those where when I've met them on the Monday face to face, they've offered me the job. And it was like, wow. And I hadn't really had time to discuss it with the family. So I wanted to work. I wanted to get back into work. And this was an opportunity, and went with it. And it happened as quickly as that. We had to get all the contract and paperwork sorted out. But I was flying to Ibiza on the Thursday because it was my daughter's wedding. And so I had to drive up to Scotland and sort everything on the Wednesday and drive back the same day to get on the flight the next day. And you can imagine, can't you? The family are all flapping, thinking I'm not going to get on this plane for the wedding, which was rightly so in their eyes the more important thing.
What's the difference between maybe Scotland and England? Is there any standout differences that you've come across working at Dundee?
Yeah, I think there was quite a few. I think the passion of the supporters, I had a wonderful connection with the Dundee fans, brilliant relationship with them. That was really good. But the passion, you know, and the expectation again of them. Obviously in Dundee, you've got the unique two clubs on one road. Dundee United are at the bottom of the hill and Dundee are at the top of the hill, and there's only 250 yards between the two. And that in itself, in the city, you're either Dundee or Dundee United, the Arabs as they're known, Dundee United. So, you know, it was, you couldn't go anywhere without someone offering an opinion. They're football mad up there. They really are. And so whether it was a Dundee United fan giving you a bit of stick or a Dundee fan telling you better make sure you win at the weekend, you couldn't escape it. So I really enjoyed that. The football in itself felt more frantic up there in Scotland. But another difference was obviously facilities. The EPPP in England had raised the bar massively over in England in comparison to Scotland. So the facilities were a big thing as well. But the work ethic of the Scottish players that we had was phenomenal. You know, you were literally dragging them, kicking and screaming off the pitch.
What do you think about the development of Scottish football then, Gary, in terms of that experience that you had? You know, we see Scotland in the Euros, we see Celtic and Rangers trying to compete in Europe. What are your thoughts on the overall development of football in that country?
It's difficult, like you say. It's not a level playing field by a long stretch up there because of the finances involved at Celtic Rangers. They've nearly got sort of like three leagues in one league. You know, you've got Celtic Rangers, then you might have sort of like Aberdeen, Hearts, Hibs floating around, and then the rest are all fighting to stay in the division. I personally found the fact that you played each other 4 times in a season was a bit too much. And I thought if you extended either the Premiership or had the Premiership bigger and the Championship bigger, that would certainly help. But I understand revenue. You know, if you're having Celtic come to you twice a year as a smaller club, that generates massive income for you, you know, with the away support of Celtic and Rangers. So I get it from a business point of view, but the footballing point of view, yeah, it's a difficult challenge for them.
What about maybe artificial pitches and stuff around that? Did that ever kind of impact the way that you played? I'm just interested on that as a whole.
Do you know what? It was fascinating because they have a different view on it. They trained on it all their lives because obviously lack of facilities up there. So they trained on it all their lives. The players just get on with it. And it didn't really change how we played. The only problem that you had was that sometimes one or two of the surfaces weren't great, and you know the bounce of the ball. It was like your old-fashioned bouncy ball on concrete. The ball would bounce and keep bouncing, so to speak. You know, so there's some of the games on the artificial weren't great, but again, they just got on with it. The players, credit to them.
Last question then, Gary. I always ask my guests to reflect back, which we have, but more importantly, think forward. So what's next for Gary Bowyer? What's the next plans for yourself? Is there anything that you've got yourself set on going forward?
Well, my last game that I managed, I won a football league with Dundee, and that's the last game I've managed in lifting a trophy. And so, you know, people say, well, that's a good way to go out, but I don't want to go out like that. You know, I want to have another go. And so I feel like I've got a lot to offer. My experiences that I've talked to you about today, working with developing players. I love working with players and developing players. You know, I'm fortunate to work with some fabulous players, Grant Hanley, Tom Kelly, David Raya, who now at Arsenal, I gave him his debut. Sean Longstaff at Newcastle, he came on loan to us. And the ones I've mentioned previously. So I really enjoy seeing them progress and go on. And so I want to be involved in the game and do that. So that's the short term. I think because of my experiences that I've had in the game, married with my sports directorship, I've got a master's in sports directorship. I think I see myself as an asset to an owner, to be someone that can bridge the gap between the manager and the owner and offer support and advice both ways because of, like I say, what I've been involved in. So a sporting director later on down the line.
Well, good luck with that, Gary, wherever that might lead you, whether that's in Scotland, England, maybe across the globe, potentially. Yeah. But I just want to wish you all the best with that and wish you well with your future adventures. I think just reflecting on what we've spoken about, you speak very honestly, openly about certain things, and hopefully there's a lot of lessons that listeners can take away from this conversation to improve them. So once again, Gary Bowyer, thank you for joining.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.